All right, welcome back to Spiritual Warfare Unit at UCAN Studios. My name is Isaac, and I am here with Dan Armstrong. Say good morning.
Good morning.
Before we get to the rest of his story, please go to spiritualwarfareunit.com, and you can click on struggling. So if you know someone who is struggling with food or clothes or baby formula, please go to spiritualwarfareunit.com and use that link to help people. If you know someone struggling with drug addiction or mental health or suicide prevention, please go to ucanmichigan.com, and on there you hit struggling, you punch in your information. Someone will call you within 24 hours to make sure to help your family. So help us, help others, help you. Thank you so much. All right, Dan. So our last little story, you had started off in high school, and you knew from an early age being in front of people and getting out there and doing your thing was it. You were very much into your career, high school, college, graduated. Went to Escanaba, yes. Remember that? Because of the bad movie.
That's right.
Have you there a little while?
Have you seen it?
Everyone's seen it.
Okay.
It's not good. So moving on, and that's just personal reference. So we were moving on, and you and your wife were just missing each other a year and a half. Thank God her name starts with A instead of Z. And so you start dating, you do the wraparound arm. She grabs a hand. 2 months later, married, and this is 2008. So you were one of the lucky people to keep your job at TV 24.
Yeah.
And good for them for just getting it done, just lopping it off in one day instead of holding that on over your head. That would have sucked, right? Yeah. And then you decide that you want to go back to school to give yourself more options.
Sure.
All right. So now we get to get the rest of the story.
Yes, we do.
So that's where we were sitting. We're in 2008. You decided to go back to school. You're still doing anchor on TV 25. Mm-hmm. All right. Married, kids coming. What's next?
Sure. So we welcome our first daughter, Ashley, in June of 2008, which is wonderful. And all the time, getting that pressure of there's got to be something next. There's got to be something after this because the way the TV news is going, it's getting smaller and smaller. Yeah. The opportunities are getting fewer and fewer. So getting my master's degree in journalism at the time, doing it online because we couldn't uproot ourselves or those kinds of things. So we're toiling. We're showing a lot of grit. We're really working hard, struggling, hustling. And we find out not too later after having Ashley that we're pregnant with our second one. Hey. So more blessings, double the blessings. And then there we go.
Downshifting again.
There we go again. Yeah. You're making a lot of noise, but not much progress. I'm just kidding.
That's right.
But it's wonderful, though. So we welcome our second daughter, Aubrey. They're 20 months apart. Right. So they're pretty close.
Almost Irish twins.
Almost Irish twins. And the cool thing is, and I didn't even, think about it too much until now that, of course, we have Ashley. And then we thought about, should we do like an A-B kind of thing? We really like the name Bryn, like for a girl. And we're like, I kind of like Aubrey too. So I won't jump the gun, but there's a pattern developing here. So Ashley, and then we have Aubrey.
The
A's, yes.
Yeah,
so
for the Armstrong.
That's 2010. Things are still, back and forth. 2011. Pretty uneventful. 2012 is very critical. Okay. So we're fast forwarding to 2012. And in 2012, things were really starting to get dicey at work where I was working, everyone was assigned early mornings, Saturday and Sunday.
Okay.
And I'm like, well, we help with the children's ministry at our church, all these kind of things. And so we're going back and forth. I'm like, is there a way you can make an accommodation for me? Because we have all these things here. No, we can't make any accommodations, those kinds of things. So it's like, you know what? For spiritual reasons, it seems like this isn't going the way that we want to because we want to be involved in our church, but yet we're not able to because we're working this schedule.
Right.
So that's one thing that kind of got me thinking that way. And in the beginning of 2012, there was an opportunity at Lawrence Tech in Southfield to teach two classes. So when Governor Jennifer Granholm was still leading the state, there was money given to develop a lot of Hollywood. There's like Hollywood incentives and even money for colleges.
Oh, yeah, doing movies.
Yeah, doing movies, right. Yeah. So a lot of colleges got money to start a program to do video or some kind of productions. Yeah. And Lawrence Tech said, hey, we got some money through a grant to do this. We don't have it. Can you write the curriculum for this and do it? And I'm like, oh, that's great. Yeah, cool. So, and I said, my schedule's all over the place. What can we do? And they said, you set your hours, you set the block classes. I'm like, so I took all of my vacation time
Nice.
which I told my wife before I did that.
Right.
We agreed on it. So all the vacation time I took, I teach my block classes. So 3 hours with my one news writing class and 3 hours with my TV production class. So the first time that I taught college courses, I did not have a master's degree. And the reason for getting a master's degree so that I could teach college courses. Kind of weird, kind of ironic there.
Yeah. I was just about to ask that question.
Yeah, right. So it's like, wait a minute. So I finally so that semester, I'm working full time. I'm going to college full time. I'm doing a master's degree. And then I'm teaching 2 college courses. And I'm trying to be a husband and a father, which is
that's a full load.
That's a full load.
Yeah.
So by the end of that, we've talked about Emmanuel Baptist.
Yeah, and you said this is 2012, right?
2012.
Okay.
So Ashley, who was 3 and turned 4 that year, was a cubby in the Awana program at Emmanuel on Richfield Road there.
Yep.
And so that she had a little award ceremony at the end, and I'm like, "This is cool, I'm going to enjoy this." So I got off the set at 6:35. It's about a half hour from Clio to Emmanuel, and I'm like, "Oh, I'll make it in plenty of time." So I get there, I pull in, I sit in next to Amber, and she's just kind of shaking her head, and I'm like, "What's the matter? When does Ashley go up there?" And she's like, "She just walked off." Oh, and I'm like. So I'm not a big visionary person. I'm not one to get the hint, as you can see with, seeing her name in the emails and all those other things where it's just like, I'm just plugging away. I'm doing my thing.
Yeah.
Deal with the cards you're dealt. And I'm like, I think there's got to be a change here because I saw that and I'm like, I'm going to multiply this over a 30, 40 year potentially career and missing every single one of these. And I'd already missed more Christmases, Easters, birthdays than I cared to, talk about. So I'm thinking there's got to be something different. There's got to be something different. So I actively put out feelers and just say, okay, maybe at this stage in life, I just cannot do this. And it's just not going to work. And all this time before, it was all about me. We structured our whole day around my work schedule, whether it was working days, nights, weekends, holidays, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, you know what? That's not fair for my wife. That's not fair for my family to have to go through that. So it shouldn't always be about me.
Right.
And there was an opportunity to go to a regular 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, holidays, weekends off job in Midland. And I'm like, this is awesome. So I ended up taking that. And it was one of the most, I thought it was difficult because the day I quit television, Amber cried and I didn't. She cried because she realized how much it meant to me, and I had to put on the brave face, of course. But it hurt because I thought this was my dream. This is all what I always wanted to do. But I can't do my dream because of my family. Right, exactly.
Because I'm a good husband.
Yes, I try to be.
So what did you do in Midland?
So we had to buy a house, and 2012 was similar to
the market is terrible.
Right, market's terrible, but everyone wants in. There was not very much inventory. So every time we would go for several weeks up to Midland, and we got to know the McDonald's play place really well because we would take the kids there for lunch as we looked for houses. And every time something came up, we would call and say, hey, when can we see it? Oh, there's already 4 offers. There's already 5 offers and a bunch of contingencies. So the guy who hired me up in Midland, I said, hey, you go to a big church. Can you just ask around and say, hey, if anyone is looking to sell or if you know someone who's looking to sell, let's network a little bit. So he calls me back a few days later and he's like, oh, remember when you told me to ask around? I said, yeah. And he's like, I forgot to do that. Like, so why are you calling me? And he says, because I remember. He's like, well, someone came to me and said, hey, a woman whose husband has passed away a little while ago is going to move out of her house. That's the plan, and live somewhere else. So they're looking to possibly sell this house. Oh, all right. So we drive up there and meet them, just totally cold. We have no idea who these people are. We met her daughter and son-in-law. We're looking around the house, and it's way more than what we would need and way more than what we could afford. Right. And I just said, I don't want to
waste your time.
I don't want to waste your time, but I want to manage your expectations. And the little kids, Ashley and Aubrey are just kind of running around. It was actually the due date of our 3rd daughter. We're looking at this house. We were a week late for every one of our kids. So we were still pretty comfortable at that point. So I said, I don't want to waste your time, but you know what? Let's just pray about this. No expectations, no pressure, and just say, we want the Lord to provide this house for whoever needs this.
Right.
Even if it's not us, because if there's something better, then we want that. So we held hands and we prayed, and we're heading back to Davison from Midland, and it's the middle of a hailstorm, and it's hitting the van so hard we can barely hear each other in the van. And we get a phone call. It's someone I don't know. I pick it up and they say, hey, this is the homeowner. I'm the mother of the people who just showed you around.
Yeah.
And she told me about your story and all those things. And we want to sell it to you for whatever you can afford. And I'm just,
wow.
Oh, man. This is so no realtor, no scheduling, just move in when you can, that kind of stuff. So
wow,
it was one of those nights. It was the first time in my life.
You got this.
That I didn't sleep because I recognized the Lord's goodness.
Because he nailed you.
There are times, and I'm sure you've been here too, where you're up all night because you're either blaming God for something or you're nervous, you're anxious.
Yeah.
And I'm not too proud to admit that I've had several sleepless nights where I've been worried about things or God coming through for things.
Right.
But it was the first time in my life that I couldn't go to sleep because I was praising him all night.
Yeah. You're like, I can't believe you did this.
And if
This
you've
is so
never,
amazing.
if you've never experienced that, look around you.
You got to.
Because you have to.
Yeah, find those people, right?
You got to find those people. So everything was working out really well.
Before you go to the next one, we already got to go to a break.
Right.
God, this is such a great
good.
interview.
It was fun.
If you've not gone to covenanteyes.com, because we are getting to that,
Yes.
please do that and check that out while we're sitting, hanging out. You guys sit tight. Spiritual Warfare Unit, like, share, and subscribe. We will be right back. All right. Welcome back to the Warriors Way. Our community warrior this week is Dan Armstrong, and we had just got into his he had his God moment where couldn't afford a house, and the person's like, yeah, sure, we'll get it to you, and you couldn't believe that happened. So you're up all night going, wow, God, there's this moment. There's the before and after this moment happened.
Yes.
The before, the stress, the worry, and then, oh my God, he did it. And then, man, you got this testimony. So what was the time frame? This is 2012, you
Sure,
said?
it's 2012 still. And
So how long did it take you to move? Like 2 days?
we're up there. See ya.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where, so we sold our house here, and the appraisal came in at $5,000 less. So we had to take $5,000 less, and I'm like, normally I would really care, and I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, this is great.
Yeah.
It could be a lot less than that because I'm so happy about what we're getting into. So we have our daughter Amelia in May of that year, and by the end of that month in June-ish is when we finally make that transition up there.
Okay.
So there was a transition where I was up there working and at the house, getting things
So what
settled.
is the job that you're doing in Midland?
Sure. So it's at the Mackinac Center for Public Policy, and I am doing similar things I was doing with news, so doing video stories on public policy matters.
Gotcha.
And within a few months there, the person who hired me moved on to another job, and then they said, how would you like to
Do
try
his
this?
job.
To do his job, right.
Yeah,
So that was another jump, which was wonderful and unexpected.
Yeah.
So we're up in Midland doing our thing, and we love Midland. In fact, my family's up there now at the Butterfly House in Dow Gardens there. So doing the job there. But that was one of those jobs where I had done stories with them in the past, so I knew them. And I also had talked to Covenant Eyes in the past. And I remember my first interview with the people at Covenant Eyes. It was probably 2007.
Hold on.
All right.
You're doing the job at Midland.
Yes, doing the job in Midland.
And then how did you get hooked up with, how long were you doing that before you got hooked up with?
Sure. So I hired in at Covenant Eyes in...
No, back up. You hired in...
in Midland. Sorry, in Mackinac Center. So I was there...
2012.
2012. Yep. So May, June-ish of 2012.
Until when did you go to...
So 2012 until the very end of 2015, because my first day at Covenant Eyes was January 1, 2016.
All right. So how did you first hear this place? How did that happen?
So you would think in the circles that I was a part of, I would have heard about them before, but I hadn't.
Which is weird.
Which is weird, because normally you would hear about this because these things are known in these circles. My wife, her family had used them well before I even knew about this. So we go over to Owasso because they had expanded from this little strip mall location to a big warehouse in Owasso. And so I'm talking to these people, and maybe 10, 15 seconds into the conversation, I'm like, you guys are Christians, aren't you?
Wait a minute. And how did you hear of it?
So it was a news story where they were moving and they were expanding. It was an economic development story where they had gotten some money to do certain things. And
all right, so you're doing your job. You run into them. They're a story.
Yep.
And then you meet them, and after like 15 seconds, you're like, oh, you guys are Jesus
exactly.
freaks.
Like, wait a minute. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's like, cool, me too. Now what?
Yeah.
Right?
So, and that was way back when I was still doing news. That was around the time I got married.
Yeah.
So I'd always kept them in mind. We had emailed each other back and forth, but they were a small company. They were maybe 40 or 50 people at the time.
Yeah.
And just like talking, if we ever got to a point where there was a job for me there or not, we would talk about that. And there were times when I was even in Midland where they said, hey, we think we have something. And so I would go and talk to them like, well, it's not really a good fit at this point.
Right.
So we had gone back and forth quite a bit. And then we got to the point where at the end of 2015, where they said, you know what, we just want to create a position for you that you will be able to help us structure to do a lot of promotions and public relations and pitching, public stories and all that kind of stuff.
So they wanted you to be their marketing person.
Yeah, like an outbound. They did really good inbound marketing. They were looking for someone to do more outbound marketing.
So, and your reason for helping them, why is this something that's a passion for you?
Because growing up, and you were in the same circles I was.
Yep.
And I don't know how your family handled it, because growing up, we would spell sex. Yeah. We wouldn't even say the word in the house. If we were to refer to other anatomical, scientific, actual words for parts of our body, just like our arms and our legs, we would be scolded, because it's like, we don't say that. What do you? Even within context, it's just like it wasn't safe to have. It was a conversation.
It was a conversation in my house. It just didn't happen.
Okay. And
you do not speak. It will the things that will not be named.
Yes, right. Well,
and it's just like this is how you do this. It's weird. It feels weird,
I'm so this month in March, I turned 44 years old, and I'm still waiting on my sex talk from my parents.
Yeah, it's weird.
One of them, my dad passed away, so he's off the hook. and right now, my mom would not want to talk to me about this. And we figured it out. We got 5 kids now.
Yeah.
So I don't know about you, but it's one of those things where
we go back to downshifting.
Yes, we're in park at this point.
Yeah, right.
So, or maybe reverse. But that's the thing. And that's one of the things is like we as a church don't handle any of this right. And those who we had a reunion a few years ago, and only like 3 or 4 people showed up. But we went around and said, okay, what does everyone do for a living? And of course, I'm like,
you reunion from where? High school?
From high school, yeah.
I didn't know about that.
So it was just our class. So you weren't invited. Otherwise, you would have been invited.
Wow. Okay, cool.
We talked about what we're doing, and I said, well, mine's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And so they got really interested. Like, oh, I never knew that even existed, and we're talking about that. Yeah. And I said, let me ask a question. How many of you had at least one good, wholesome, solid conversation about the topic of sex in your house while you were still there? One kid.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, how did that work? Oh, we had a book and they talked about it and this is of God. And I'm like, wow, I missed that. And I think our parents thought you send them to the Christian school, we go to church
and
on
then
Sunday,
they do it.
And either they do it or you just think, well, they're not going to be tempted because we have them in the Christian school and we have them at church and the world's not going to have this influence on them. Similar with like bullying and that kind of stuff. Oh, we'll send them there. Yeah. They won't struggle with this.
That's not how any of that works.
It doesn't. No, it just created more questions. It created more curiosity. It's like, what's this forbidden fruit that we don't want to talk to our kids about? So the temptation of, oh, let's go watch a rated R movie or let's all do these things was like where a lot of kids in the other schools were like, well, we watch rated R movies all the time or we listen to rock music all the time.
I've been doing that since I was 12.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
You didn't have a beer from your dad's fridge?
Right. Exactly. So we had kids that would come from a public school and come into Christian school and they're like, why do you guys talk about rock music all the time? Yeah. And they're like, well, don't you? And he's like, it was just so commonplace. It's just like life, So it's like you want to be bad, you want to, So anyway.
All right. So before you get done and finish, we got to go to another break. This is a great conversation. Please like, subscribe, and share at Spiritual Warfare Unit. Check out UCANMichigan.com. Sit tight. We'll be right back. All right. Welcome back to the Warrior's Way. Our community warrior this week is Dan Armstrong, and he was just talking about how he was transitioning from his job to his new job doing a director, and now it's called Covenant Eyes, EYES, right?
Yep.
And it's covenanteyes.com. Covenanteyes.com. So you're going to check that out. And this is to help people that have addiction with pornography, right?
Sure.
All right. And they made this job for you to help them be able to do this. And why is this such a big passion for you?
Sure.
Now, you were saying before the break that people don't talk about it in churches. And you're right. It's like this taboo thing. And your position is what?
My position is there are a third of Christian women who admit today that they're struggling with pornography on a regular basis.
Wow.
There are 2/3 Christian men who self-admit. So it's probably higher.
Yeah.
Those who admit it are probably fewer than those who don't admit it. 2/3. So if you look around your congregation, count several people, 2/3 of them. If you shake, 5 guys' hands, at least 3 are struggling with porn. 3 women, 1 of them is struggling with porn. And how many of them have told you about that? None.
Right.
No.
Everybody's pretending to be a good person.
Everyone's pretending to be a good person.
Yep.
And we think it's a weakness. We think it's something that we can't talk about. There are only 7% of churches around the entire country that have ever had a program to help someone struggling with pornography.
Wow.
And those who used to have a program, who no longer have a program, say that it fizzled because of lack of interest.
All right. So here's my questions.
Yep.
If someone is struggling with this, what do they do? How do they get a hold of what you guys are doing?
Sure. Well, it's easy. You just go to covenanteyes.com to
Is
be
there
able to
a
do this.
number?
We have a phone number that we can put up,
Okay.
but there's customer service there, member care. But I think the first thing to do is to find someone who you trust, someone that is not in a power imbalance. So I wouldn't say this is so we don't like the idea of like a parole officer or a parolee type of thing because that situation is set up to fail because it's like, okay, you're just trying to appease someone above you. So not like a boss.
You're checking a box. You're not really
checking a box.
interested.
Exactly.
You
So
want to get your signature.
Right. You want someone on the same wavelength as you.
Yeah.
And very few people have this. I'm sure you do, but very few people have someone that they can talk to 100% authentically and be vulnerable with and know that that person won't blab to other people or use it against you or judge you or those kinds of things.
I have my wise counsel to wage my war.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You got to have it.
You have to.
You got to have your community.
And you got to hold yourself accountable then when you screw up too.
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
So tell someone. That's the big thing. And if you're in a marriage, you have to tell your wife.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like, well, if I tell my wife, my marriage is over.
Maybe.
Your marriage is probably already over.
Yeah.
You just don't notice it. You have the paper,
right?
But your marriage is probably already over because you're not being authentic. You're betraying her. And that's another thing people think is, well, I'm looking at pornography. It's not like I'm cheating. It's not like, well, yeah, you are.
Yeah.
I mean, you're mentally all the way there. You just haven't physically got with someone yet. And sometimes it goes to that and sometimes it doesn't. But imagine what it does to your wife. I mean, that is, I'm choosing someone else above you. And she's got to go through her own healing process as well.
Yeah.
But the idea of Covenant Eyes is to bring people together. So technology separates us.
Yes.
We give our phones or tablets to kids just to occupy them. Oh, kids are bored. They go in the corner and they look at their thing. Even humans, even humans. We're all humans. The dog's got one over there. No, they, even adults will take it and we veg, we scroll through Facebook and it's just like the roulette wheel. Let's see what's going on Facebook today. What kind of good stuff the algorithm has for me. So the temptation is tremendous for that. And I would say, get with someone that you can trust and say, you know what, I want to use this software to hold myself accountable. And a lot of people will say, oh, I can do it without it. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Very few people can do it alone. If you try to do it alone, we're all going to lose. You versus technology, you're going to lose.
Right.
So let's say you put a filter on your phone or that kind of thing where no one else knows about it. It just blocks you. You're going to be more tempted to get through this thing because when you see, oh, the bridge is out. Is it really?
Yeah.
It's the weekend. Let me go around it and let me see. So if other people that you've told that say, hey, I want to hold myself to this standard. Will you help me to the standard? They're on your team now, so you're going to think twice.
Yeah.
If it's just you and the thing, you're not going to think twice because no one's holding you accountable.
Right.
So it comes, whether it's pornography, substance, workaholism. I mean, there's so many anger, so many things that we struggle with. And usually people who are struggling with one struggle with others.
Sure.
Bringing other people into it rather than pushing them away because pornography is a very antisocial activity.
Sure.
It's very selfish. It's and think about, how unique this is to, I mean, temptation's not new, but the idea of you can go online right now, which I don't encourage people to do, but you can look at millions of naked people where let's go back in biblical times.
Right.
a male may have seen, I mean, even Solomon didn't see millions. I
Right.
mean, he had all kinds of concubines and wives, but we have stuff that Solomon didn't have, and he could do whatever he wanted to. So
Right.
we have
So
the super stimulus.
Here's my question that
Yeah.
why this?
Sure.
Out of all the
Sure.
things you had
Sure.
why this one?
It's underserved. It's underserved, and we just talked about how there's very little help for people who struggle.
Yeah, it's underserved, but why this one?
Right. There's so
Like
many.
Dan, you could have done.
Sure.
You could have done 50, like for me, the jail,
Sure.
the drug rehabilitation.
Sure.
My mom struggles with addiction to this day. My
Sure.
family has struggled with rage issues. And
Sure.
so my passion
Sure.
about second chances becomes really, really important. That's
Sure.
my driver.
Sure.
There's something that's pushing you towards
Right.
this thing. And
Right.
and you don't have to tell me, but I really want to know
Sure.
that fire that
Yeah.
you just
Sure.
that burns you.
There are people that are in chains right now that I want to see them to be able to find victory for that. This is something that I think people get so much victory in their lives, but this is holding them back.
Really?
This is something that they will go their entire life without this. One of the best stories that I can tell is I was at a conference in Minneapolis. And we had a booth there for Covenant Eyes, and a guy came over on the last day, and he says, the reason why I came over here is because I didn't want my boss to see me come over here, because people start looking at you weird when you go over to the place that you go to for help with porn. And he says, I work for a Christian bookstore, and I am currently looking at pornography on the computers at the Christian bookstore.
Wow.
He says, I've struggled with this for 40 years. Will you pray with me?
Wow.
If I wasn't there, who's he going to go to?
Right?
He's got nobody.
Yeah.
That's one guy, you know?
Right.
And how many other people are like that in this
At
world?
a Christian store
At
of
a
all
Christian,
places.
at a Christian conference, at a Christian distributor kind of place, and he's like, I need someone to pray with me. I have not found victory over
Man,
this.
that's a great
And I've
story.
tried my best, and he says, I'm actually working at, he's like, the word of God is around me, and I can't break free.
So what can people do? I got a couple minutes left. So what can people do to help you? Or what is the thing that you want people to remember out of this?
Sure. I think for parents, have at least 10 good conversations with your children before they're 10 years old. Have at least 10 conversations where you say, and you can start young. You can start 3 or 4 years old to say, you know what, little Johnny or little Jane, God made us beautiful. God made all of us beautiful. But there are some parts of your body where no one's allowed to look at and no one's allowed to touch. If you start with that, that will set them on their way to better understanding things, where if you don't have that conversation, they could be open for the dirty uncle who's coming up and just like, hey, let me touch you.
So
or
even
touch
at
that.
an early age,
even
if they
very
know
young,
you can't touch
right.
that. My mom said that.
Exactly. Don't touch that. Don't look at that kind of stuff. Equip them with that. And then throughout their lives, give them the freedom to ask questions. When people, and it happened in my family, it happened in many other families, when they would come home and say, hey, I just learned a new word at school. It's and then you can fill in the rest. And then they either get slapped or it's like, we don't say that here. In fact, I bet you heard that from the kid down the road, and you're not hanging with them anymore. So what did we just teach that kid? We taught them, if you're confused, if you have a question, don't go to mom and dad. They're going to get mad.
They're going to slap the taste out of your mouth.
Exactly. Right. So we don't talk like that. So guess where you're going to go? Back to your kids. Today, they're going to go to Google. What does this mean? So that's my thing. I see people suffering in silence. I see people suffering quietly, and you can look through that person and say, there's something there. There's something that you're missing, and there's something you're struggling with, and you're not even comfortable talking to me about this. And this is something, Isaac, that I think we should do. For those who are currently struggling or who have struggled and are finding victory, give the gift of going first. Say, you know what? I don't know what's going on with your life, but there could be several things. But one of them is, earlier on in my life, I struggled with pornography. Here's why I struggled with it. Here are the situations. And if you're doing that too, I'm a safe place to confide in. I'm not going to use it against you. I'm not going to be mad at you. I'm going to help you through this.
I'm just saying I get it.
Make it safe.
Yeah.
Make it safe for them to say that.
Dan, that's such an amazing piece of information. I love what you do. I cannot wait to be a help to you.
Thank you.
I just love having this conversation with you.
too.
Unfortunately, we are out of time, so we're going to have to schedule back for another one. But Dan, thank you so much for coming into Covenant Eyes. People can check that out at covenanteyes.com. Alas, our story is over. And we will have you on next time. Thank you so much for
great.
coming on the Spiritual Warfare Unit, and we will see you next time. Do you have a nonprofit in your area that's doing a lot of work that people should know about? Feel free to contact Spiritual Warfare Unit at 810-715-9319, and we would love to have them on to see what good they're doing in the community and find out their story. Thank you so much.